Assassin's Creed 3 finally came out on PC almost a month after it did on consoles, and Ubisoft promised that it would be at least equal to the console version on a technical level. This review will cover both the technicals and the game as a whole. Let's hope ACIII lives up to its massive hype. I'm going to keep this review as spoiler-free as possible, but here's the first one. The game starts out in the 18th century at a theatre. This may seem a strange beginning for a game that's all about freedom and parkour, but it sets the scene perfectly and provides a nice tutorial for the modified climbing mechanics of the game. From there, the story twists and turns through many historical events of colonial America in the 18th century, and I loved it. The writing is seriously good, alongside the voice acting. I especially like the variety of accents that can be heard in this nation made up almost entirely of immigrants. American, French, British, Irish, Scottish, they're all in there, and the subtle accent of the main protagonist, a Native American named Connor for short, with a rarely mentioned native name that I dare not attempt to pronounce, was for me a joy to listen to. On that note, I don't think the Assassin's Creed series has received as much praise as it deserves for its sound design, and Assassin's Creed 3 is no exception to this. The sound design is absolutely wonderful, from the extension of a hidden blade to the noises of a busy Boston market crowd to the hoofsteps of a deer feeding on the undergrowth. Everything sounds spectacular. The score is pretty good as well, but has few standout tracks and is mostly there to set the scene. Having said that, I really appreciated the difference between areas, especially the tribal feel of the music when exploring the forests of the frontier. The frontier itself adds a new kind of gameplay to the series. Unlike the square, man-made landscapes of the previous games, which do feature in ACIII as well, the frontier is made up of stunning natural landscapes, filled with rivers, cliffs, trees, long grass through which you can stalk enemies or prey, and all manner of other things. The tree running was fairly good, but not as natural feeling as the game's trailers suggested it would be. There are still fairly obvious paths through the forest canopy, and you can't just go jumping up every tree you see. The parkour still relies on the player's ability to identify different types of tree branch, much like being able to identify different aspects of man-made architecture in order to know where a move is going to take you. Nevertheless, it feels fun and the animation is excellent. The free running system has undergone the biggest change in the series so far in this game. Only one button is needed to be held down to start running, which is in some ways nice. However, the free run button and the sprint button are now the same, meaning that you might have trouble staying on the ground while running. This was particularly annoying in the few ground level chases that occurred, as Connor was eager to climb up anything to come near him. For the most part though, I think the changes are for the better. I especially liked the complete refresh of all the animations. It didn't look like very much at all had been reused, unlike in the previous games. In terms of combat, I'd say this is the most varied and interesting Assassin's Creed yet. There are so many unique animations now that I didn't start recognising moves until I was about 6 hours in, and the sound design and animations lend themselves to a brilliantly visceral fighting experience. However, despite Ubisoft's promises before release, the combat system still has a very heavy reliance on the counter mechanic. It has been spiced up a little. There are a larger number of enemies who will need to be dealt with in a unique way, and a fair few who can't be countered at all. These small changes do make the combat more challenging than it would first appear to be, but it's still not really difficult by anyone's standards. As far as I can tell, there are no difficulty options in the game. I think that's something I would really appreciate. You can just take so many hits, it seems a little too easy. A constant criticism throughout this series, I find. If I might draw attention to one surprisingly fun feature, it's the naval battles. When I first got the hint that I would have to control a huge, unwieldy warship and manage the firing of its multiple guns, I thought it'd probably be a tedious section that I wouldn't enjoy. I was so wrong. The naval battles were some of the most epic parts of the game, with surprisingly tight controls and a very nice combat system. Assassin's Creed 3 has multiplayer, along a very similar vein to that introduced in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. It has the same game types we're used to from the previous two games: Wanted, Deathmatch, Assassination, Artifact Assault, and Manhunt, which mostly all play around the basic concept of having to stealthily locate and assassinate opposing players while remaining undetected yourself. Two new game modes were introduced with ACIII: Domination, wherein 2 teams of 4 battle it out to capture and hold 3 points around the map, and Wolfpack, a co-op mode involving taking down NPCs with the help of other players. I must admit, I haven't played that much of the multiplayer, as Assassin's Creed's story is what gets me excited about it, and I like a good story, but the multiplayer's good. It plays on the strengths of the single player, like free running and stealth actions, and brings them very well into a score-based multiplayer format. It also makes a nice change from the many purely action-based multiplayer experiences you can get today as well. Patience and cunning are most definitely required in Assassin's Creed multiplayer. If there's one thing I'd like to see added, it's the naval battles. That'd be awesome in a multiplayer environment. Graphically, as you'd expect, this is the best Assassin's Creed game yet. It is gorgeous. The landscapes alone are beautiful, but you can tell that special attention has been given to the PC version, which is obviously designed to run on much higher-end hardware than the console versions. Texture resolution has never been great in the previous AC games, but Ubisoft have done an awesome job with ACIII. The textures are fantastic across the board. On top of that, the updated game engine, Anvil Next, looks absolutely glorious on PC, supporting a number of DirectX 11 effects and running surprisingly well. I'm still equipped with my faithful old GeForce GTX 460, and even that managed playable frame rates at the highest settings and at Full HD. To achieve 60 frames a second, I turned shadows down to their lowest and terrain detail to normal, and it still looks so much better than the console version. If you're lucky enough to own a GTX 600 series card, it also supports a new type of anti-aliasing called TXAA, which adds anti-aliasing not unlike that used in animated films. For the most part, this is an excellent PC port, but it is lacking in two areas, I'd say. One, graphics options. There are a few separate options, but they use quite ambiguous terms. A more advanced menu for adjusting each effect would be nice, and I'm hoping they'll add that in a patch or something. Secondly, keyboard and mouse controls just didn't work very well for me. Some people might like them, but as with all the previous AC games, I much preferred playing with a gamepad, which it pleasingly has full support for. There's plenty more to say about Assassin's Creed 3, I assure you. It's a much deeper game than you may think, with tons of side missions and optional objectives with every main story mission for those who want to take on an extra challenge. But if I said everything I wanted to say, this review would be half an hour long. Let me finish by saying that, of course, if you've played and enjoyed the previous Assassin's Creed games like most people have, then you'd be daft not to play this latest addition to the series. Be warned though, the ending's a bitch. In a good way, kinda, but my god, the cliffhangers. Assassin's Creed 3 is available from ugkeys.com.